MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle interviewed Bernie the other day and managed to piss off every single online lefty with a question that she asked.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders from the state of Vermont. He is leading a group of progressive Democratic senators demanding $1,200 stimulus checks be included in the next relief bill. Senator, we've heard your impassioned argument. Help us understand, how many other senators have you convinced to support these stimulus checks? Any Republicans on board?
Yes, I think there is one, but Senator Hawley indicates that he is supportive of a $1,200 per person direct payment and $600 or $500 for children. I think the Democratic caucus is ready to go forward on that. Yesterday, I sent out a letter with 5 other senators, and I think we can have virtually all of the United States Democratic senators on board. The question now is whether or not Mitch McConnell is going to turn his back, as your report just indicated, on the incredible suffering that the American people, the working people, are now experiencing. Unemployment high. We have a record level of hunger in America. Millions of people are facing evictions. This is an emergency. Congress has got to respond aggressively to help working families. You know, Stephanie, I always get a kick. Here in Washington, when we go to war, there's endless amounts of money. Tax breaks for billionaires, endless amounts of money. Corporate welfare, endless amounts of money. When children are going hungry in America today, suddenly we don't have enough money. That's crap. That's wrong. And if we have got to stay here throughout Christmas, which is the last thing in the world that I would want to do, we are going to stay here because we are going to make sure that struggling working families in this country get the help they desperately need.
Senator, I'm not agreeing with you fundamentally, but I want to talk to you practically. You've been the lead sponsor of 422 bills during your 30 years in Congress, but only 7 of them have become law. Given that record and how dire things are, as you just laid out, do you need to find another lane or take a different approach here?
I yearn for the sweet embrace of death. Nancy Pelosi has been in D.C. longer than Bernie. She has the exact same number of bills for her. Would they ever ask that question to Nancy Pelosi? Ever? Not in a million years. Not in a million years. Blaming Bernie Sanders because Washington, D.C. is a corrupt swamp, and he happens to not be corrupt. Blaming him because his colleagues are trash. By the way, it's also incredibly misleading because Bernie Sanders got the nickname the Amendment King. Why? He was able to get provisions that he wanted into many bills. Again, not the lead sponsor of it, right? That's what she brought up. Oh, the lead sponsor, only 7 of them became law. Yeah, but what about the amendments where he put overwhelmingly positive things into other pieces of legislation? You don't give him any credit for that, do you? You don't give him any credit for working with Mike Lee, for example, a Republican across the aisle, to end the genocide in Yemen, to stop arming Saudi Arabia. That passed. It was Donald Trump who vetoed it. Is that Bernie's fault? Of course it's not Bernie's fault. It's Donald Trump's fault. By the way, there's also this misnomer that, like, you can't be a principled leftist and compromise and work across the aisle. Actually, the exact opposite is true. If you're a principled leftist, you'll find plenty of areas of compromise with the right. You could work with the libertarian right to end war. You could work with the populist right to do stimulus checks, like Bernie's doing here with Josh Hawley. So there's actually the opportunity for more bipartisanship and more coalition building if you're on the left and you actually have an ideology. But the belief of stupid people who don't know this stuff or care about this stuff, they just assume you have to be a corporatist in order to get anything done that's bipartisan. And they fetishize bipartisanship when it's on the corporatist terms, but when it's on the left's terms, they smear it or they act like it doesn't exist. And so, I mean, think about that, guys. The whole job of the media is to be a watchdog of the powerful. Is that what Stephanie Ruhle is doing here? The questions that she should be asking are questions of the other people who are not in favor of the stimulus checks. And she should be grilling them and saying, are you insane? Have you seen the numbers? 40% of the country is food insecure. 28 million people are on the brink of homelessness. Meanwhile, billionaires got $1 trillion wealthier since the beginning of COVID. And you're not even for a $1,200 stimulus check? Do you understand that other developed countries are paying anywhere from 70% to 100% of people's wages as they lock down? And we had a one-time $1,200 check? Are you insane not being for this? She should be prodding the people who are not for the stimulus checks and holding power accountable. Instead, she tries to play gotcha with one of the only people who's trying to hold the powerful accountable and trying to do the right thing by the American people. They don't grill the powerful. They grill the people who grill the powerful. It's that old Malcolm X quote, if you're not careful, the media will have you loving your oppressor and hating the oppressed. I mean, that's exactly what we're seeing here. She also, by the way, used the unpopularity of this bill with the rest of DC. She used that as an argument of its silliness on the face of it and how it's not pragmatic. She's like, if it's you and Hawley, and this wasn't in the bill that they already negotiated, I mean, maybe you're wrong and maybe you should try a different approach or something. So, in other words, hey, the swamp is really swampy and you're not sufficiently swampy, so maybe the problem's with you. No, Stephanie, not at all. There's a reason why Congress regularly has an approval rating around 20%. Because people know it's the swamp. People know they're corrupt. And then you have every now and then, you get somebody who comes along who wants to do something for the people. And that's what you decide to be aggressive about? I mean, honestly, it is fucking sickening. It really is. It's sickening. She's trying to make the point, like, obviously you're ineffectual. Obviously you're bad at this. I mean, look at the numbers here. Blaming Bernie Sanders because the rest of his colleagues are corrupt and don't care about people. And ignoring the Amendment King aspect of his career. It really doesn't get any worse than her. Because she's framing her defense of the status quo as if it's like edgy and holding the powerful accountable. That's not what you're doing. You're defending the powerful, whether or not you realize it. You're defending the status quo, whether or not you realize it. Taking the only guy who's actually fighting for people in this instance and trying to use his record against him and play gotcha. By the way, what exactly do you want him to do? What exactly should he do? He reached across the aisle, is working with Josh Hawley, trying to get people stimulus checks, is fighting for it right now, and you're saying, why don't you take a different approach? What's the different approach? What would you rather him do? And I think the answer is just don't push for the stimulus checks. If I had to guess, that's what it is, right? She would probably say just take the Manchin Romney deal or the Manchin McConnell deal. Take it. Even though it's a stimulus bill without stimulus checks during effectively an economic depression. She doesn't care about you. She doesn't understand the pain that's happening in this country right now. She's comfortable in her little elitist bubble, and so she's toughest on one of the only non-elitist politicians. It says a lot about Stephanie Ruhle.